Welcome to Creative Distillation, where we distill academic research on entrepreneurship into actionable insights, all while enjoying a tasty beverage here in Boulder, Colorado. My name is Jeff York. I'm the Research Director at the Deming Center for Entrepreneurship at the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Brad Werner. I'm the Faculty Director for Entrepreneurship at the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado. And actually, we're at Asher Brewing
Yes,
in
actually,
Boulder.
clearly we are. As most times last week, or I guess last episode, it wasn't actually last week, but we were at a distillery, so we sought to broaden our horizons this episode and go to a brewery. And in particular, Asher Brewing stands out amongst many of the breweries here in the Front Range of Colorado in that they are an organic brewery. And so I thought that would be a particularly apropos setting for today's discussion, as we're going to be talking about research on entrepreneurship for sustainable development, as the title of one of our papers puts it this week. I feel like last time we were together, Brad, I did not do as much justice as I could have to the paper in distilling it into actionable insights, as is our goal here on Creative Distillation. So I'm redoubling my efforts.
The exciting part is tying in the organic component of the brewery that we're at today with also... Organic's a hot topic around the country, not only in rural areas, city areas, and I think that we can break this down and shed some light and hopefully identify some tools that entrepreneurs can use coming out of the paper that we're going to discuss most importantly, after our tasting.
Yeah, most importantly, after the tasting. So let's get to it and try some of this beer and find out what Asher Brewing's all about.
Perfect.
Today we have Abigail and Intolubbe-Chmil.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got it right. Abigail is the general manager here at Asher Brewing, has been involved in the brewing industry for about 6 years, and we're going to be tasting some of their concoctions here. So, Abigail, what are we about to taste here?
So this first one is going to be our Green Lantern Kolsch.
Awesome.
Kolsch is a traditional German-style beer.
name.
Nice,
Cheers.
light, crisp.
cheers.
Cheers. So I wanted to bring this one out because it is the most recent beer that we've started canning.
Okay.
Is it all canning here, or is it bottling as well?
It is just canning. We purchased our own canning line a few years ago. We finally do own it. It's from Wild Goose Canning, so a local canning company.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
And we can this, our Green Lantern Kolsch, our Tree Hugger Amber, and our Green Bullet IPA.
Nice.
So I like this one. It's a super easy drinker. It's definitely a crowd pleaser.
Oh, yeah, you could see this could be an afternoon beer, right?
Yeah, nice afternoon beer.
Yeah, it's super clean, really nice flavor. A little bit of like almost corny kind of flavor with the Kolsch is a lot of the time. So
Yeah, that crisp body. We don't log or anything, so this is kind of
really?
our way of providing a light, crisp beer
Right,
while
sure.
still brewing 100% ales.
Yeah, but you're using like a lager yeast in this, right?
No, we use
Really?
only ale. Yeah, we
Okay.
have one strain of yeast for all of our beers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
That's
keep
really cool.
it pretty classic styles of beer.
Nice.
Is that because of your organic bent here? Jeff and I mentioned the organic focus of the brewery, and it actually aligns with what we're going to be talking about today. Can you maybe speak to the organic component and how that works within your organization?
Absolutely. So organic has been important to us from the beginning. We opened just a little bit over 10 years ago, and within that first year we had our organic certification. As far as yeast goes and getting that organic certification, keeping the same supplier and the same strains is a lot easier, so that our equipment doesn't ever get cross-contaminated and we can keep that flow going of certified organic beer. We have actually been using the same strain from the same supplier yeast the entire 10 years.
Wow.
I mean, certified organic, there are regulations involved and all that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Much higher bar.
How does that bar, though, affect business? I mean, you have to compete price-wise with the regular breweries that aren't organic.
Absolutely.
How do you play into that?
Yeah, so it started off predominantly as an ingredient focus.
Right.
Better ingredients makes better beer. It's better for you. A better excuse to drink beer. If you call it organic, it's good for you, right?
There's tons of pesticides involved in hops.
Yes,
I mean, people don't know that.
Hops and grain that translate very easily into the consumption of that product.
Sure.
And so it started off as that, and it did become something extremely unique to us. We are still the only certified organic brewery in the state of Colorado. They are popping up nationally.
Yeah.
but still definitely not a huge focus of the brewing world. That is in part due to accessibility of certified organic ingredients. It is becoming way more popular. Way more suppliers are branching into that.
And are customers demanding this now?
They're starting to. Yeah. A lot of breweries use some organic ingredients, but then again, the standards of the organic certification, which you mentioned going into later, it does have to be pretty strict. You have to stick to certain things. And going through that certification process is a lot.
Yeah, it's an arduous expense, especially for a young company. But you were saying they did it within the first year of starting the brewery. That's impressive.
Yes, I do believe it was within that first year that we got that organic certification. So we've had it now for 9 years and just a little bit of change, and we've been open for 10.
Awesome.
And is it hard then to maintain, once you have the certification, is it a grueling process to recertify, or is it pretty straightforward?
We've got a system down, but you do go through the initial audit, the in-person review, and then the final audit once a year. So every single year it is that function. Most of our suppliers have remained at least somewhat consistent because we're getting that organic product and there's not as much on the market.
I see.
Does that bring any constraints to your supply chain? Like, do you guys ever have trouble getting ingredients for a certain style you want to brew because you have to stick with these organic suppliers, or most breweries would stick with the same suppliers anyway for consistency.
Yeah, and contracts are becoming way more common in the brewing world these days, especially with hops and hop availability, getting certain types of hops on contract so that you're guaranteed to be able to brew certain types of beer.
Right.
And so really the only time that it becomes a little bit tricky is ordering a specialty malt. So
that's what I was kind of thinking about.
Right into our oatmeal stout.
Yes, let's do
that. So that's this one?
And so we purchase a specialty malt for this once a year, and so making sure this is organic is really important.
So this is your holiday brew in a sense?
Cheers.
This is our Christmas / holiday / kind of winter brew.
Oh, it is.
Man, it's got like a really nice, like kind of almost coffee-ish overtone.
What a great winter companion.
Yeah, it's great. So this is our Maceo Barker oatmeal stout.
Did you name it?
I didn't. Our wonderful brewer Chris Asher is a huge fan of funk and blues and jazz. So
you know about Maceo Barker, right?
I have no idea.
I don't tell him who it is,
but I'm going to look it up.
So Maceo
he was a communist activist, Brad.
Seriously?
No.
I have no idea.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Maceo Parker is.
Great jazz musician.
Yeah.
And so the play on this is that our original brew dog was named Maceo, so the Maceo Barker. So a little bit of funk and jazz, nice and
I thought
smooth.
you mispronounced the name when you said Maceo Barker.
So then Maceo, it's kind of paying
really
homage
famous,
to him as
played
well.
in the James Brown band, and so you can hear many James Brown. Maceo. You can,
all right.
Yeah, I need to clearly drink more.
I have homework.
Man.
Great musician.
I've got 2 James Brown Christmas albums I can share with you.
Okay, I love that.
So good dog, good guy.
Awesome.
All around. We use 50 pounds of organic oats in this to add that nice fluffy texture.
That
is great.
Absolutely wonderful. And then we'll bring out this last one.
Oh my gosh.
This is a tasting.
All right, we're saving these for the rest of the podcast.
Yep.
All right.
And so this is, I wanted to bring it out. It's our double IPA, our Greenade double IPA.
Awesome.
So it's a little higher in alcohol. It is the first beer that was ever brewed here, and we still have it around.
Really?
So
is this always on tap here then?
it is always on tap. It's one of our 4 flagships.
Oh, nice.
And it is incredibly smooth for
I'm sorry,
for
I'm like
how big
nerding
it
out
is.
and sniffing
No,
your beer. I'm a BJCP judge, so you have to smell the beer first and note all the aromas of it. I just do this with anything.
I won't judge just because I'd rather just drink.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah, so
No, the judges don't like drinking. Generally, it's no.
I hope they like to drink.
Yeah, it's got to be a miserable job, wouldn't it? So why don't you be an academic and you don't like to write?
Is this your number one seller at the brewery here at the tap room?
This is a very popular seller. Our number one is our Green Bullet IPA. You can find that in cans in the tap room. It's around town on tap too. I personally like this Grenade because it packs a little bit of a punch.
Right.
Super citrusy, lemony, orange kind of hop flavors. Really clean on the back end. It's just like a crisp, Done.
Wonderful, yeah.
So how would you judge a beer, Jeff?
Oh, man, I haven't judged a beer in a long time. I had kids, so I stopped being a beer judge a while back, but I used to do it a bit. I mean, this is really good, you know? I mean, when you judge them, you're comparing a lot of times rounds. So you do a round and you're ranking them, kind of like what we do with our students sometimes. But anyway, I'd give it very high marks. It's wonderful.
I actually think these are three of them they taste great.
Yeah, they're all
very, very different.
And he's not a big beer drinker either.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I'm attracted to bourbon more, but a really good beer.
It's not a bad thing to be attracted to.
But I do love a great beer.
Before you head out today, we do
fantastic.
have a super limited edition release on right now.
Okay.
It is a ginger beer, so it's a light amber that we steep fresh ginger root, and we rested it in a whiskey barrel for over 2 years.
That sounds awesome.
That's really
I left
great.
that out of this spread because it's very high alcohol.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
It's
We
just
got work to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to run over there.
Taste for later.
We usually celebrate making it through the podcast by purchasing large amounts of whatever the beverages where we are. Certainly what we did last time, but
Oh, good.
So if someone listening to this podcast that wants to try some of these amazing beers, how do they find you?
Sure. So I would say the first stop is always here. You can get all 8 of our beers. We sell our cans here. It's an easy stop. We fill growlers. You can bring your own. You can buy one here. Otherwise, we do have a list on our website of some of the places we are off-site.
And what is your website?
AsherBrewing.com. And so those have both on and off-premise listings.
Oh, great. Can you find Asher beyond Colorado?
No, we are Colorado specific. We don't necessarily intend to go outside of Colorado. We like keeping it local.
Oh, we're happy that you're local.
Yeah. Well, that's why we like to talk to the local businesses. And man, this is delicious. I gotta say, like I came to this brewery right when I moved here about 10 years ago, and I don't remember this beer, but these beers, I don't know. I remember thinking, yeah, these were good beers. But these beers are quite exceptional. They're really nice. So I don't know. I guess maybe nothing changed except for I got older. I don't know, but these beers are fantastic.
After 10 years, we're in a routine now.
I came here literally like within months of your opening. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
and I've been back since, of course. Yeah. So this is it's wonderful. It's love to see local businesses thrive and succeed. So go get some Asher Brewing products.
That's right. And I also noticed you have some art. Is that local artists on the wall that's for sale, or?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All around our brewery, we have some art hung up by friends of the brewery.
That's
and
very
you can
cool.
purchase it here, and the money goes right to that artist.
That is fantastic.
So definitely come out here to the tap room. It's got a great atmosphere. It's really, I'm just looking at some of the light fixtures in here. Pretty cool too. Anyway, it's a really neat place. You should come out. Check it out.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
We really appreciate you having us. And we really appreciate you here. All right, so that was awesome. Really interesting getting a perspective on organic in the brewing industry because, I mean, as Abigail pointed out, there's not that many organic breweries, but sustainability is a huge thing in breweries. Lots of consideration of the sustainable footprint. Of course, there's New Belgium Brewing Company up in Fort Collins, just up the road from here. It's an interesting aspect. So which beer is your favorite, Brad?
Actually, I like all three.
Oh, come on.
I really do. I would drink them all, and maybe that just says something about me.
I think I like the double IPA myself. It's got a really nice lemony, zingy hop flavor. I mean, we live in Colorado. It's a plethora of IPAs here. And,
That's right.
You let me nerd out about beer, I'll just keep going on and
That's
on.
right.
But I guess we should get to the research for the episode. So we wanted to come here today to Asher, and I pointed out to Brad, I'm wearing my Patagonia recycled wool, organic recycled wool shirt in tribute to this episode. Anyway, we wanted to talk about this, the broad concept of entrepreneurship and sustainability. And sustainability, obviously being a term that's kind of slippery. So we're going to let the authors of the first paper, we're going to try to do 2 this week. We'll see how it goes. This is actually in press at Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice. It's not published yet.
And let me stop you for one second, Jeff.
Please,
and the audience needs to know that you are actually an expert in sustainability. You may not agree with that
Sure, I'll take it.
But your focus in research has been sustainability, sustainable practices, and certainly in the classroom, you have a big push towards sustainability. So I'm really honored to be able to talk about this with you today.
You're always way too kind to me on this thing.
Well, then we turn the microphones off, and then I put my regular personality back. But no, seriously, I think it's great to have an expert like you, because there is confusion about what is organic, what does organic mean, is organic, certified organic, actually better for me? Is it better for the environment? And do certified organic practices, are they actual sustainable practices, or is it something that's created?
It's tough. I mean, like, answering all those questions, the answer would be it depends. It depends. It depends. We don't know a lot about what the long-term effects of many of these practices that are labeled as sustainable is, because I mean they're new innovations, new technologies. We'll be talking about a second paper that is about the creation of organic standards, particularly in California. But these are tough questions to answer, and there's a handful of people around the world that study that try to understand. Particularly in the realm of entrepreneurship. Now, there's of course a broader literature on corporate sustainability, and for folks that are interested in that, I would point you towards the Alliance for Research on Corporate Sustainability, the ARCS organization. It's a pretty amazing organization, which the Leeds School is a part of business schools that really look at the cutting edge research in the top journals on corporate sustainability. But we don't care about that. We want to talk about entrepreneurship and I mean, we do care about it. Don't get me wrong, but we're really focused on entrepreneurship and sustainability. So if you take if we think about business school academics, right?
Sure.
Let's think about them as a population, and we say how many of those folks are actually interested in sustainability as social and environmental outcomes of action. I would guess it's less than 3%. Not to say these other people don't care, but I mean, like, actually research that?
Sure, but let's compare that, though, with the students that have come through our classrooms.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
And you and I have seen thousands of people walk through the doors.
Absolutely.
And I would say 90% of them, at least in my case, are close,
sure.
are really concerned about sustainability and are looking to integrate sustainability into their new ventures.
Almost universally, especially here. I mean, I think here at the Leeds School, we got a lot of students that self-select to come here, when they could have gone to other, arguably more highly ranked MBA programs or whatever that's worth. But I mean, honestly, I've had people that have come here who were accepted to places like Stanford and Duke, and I'm always a little surprised. I'm like, well, okay, if I was your dad, though, I'd be like, hey, you need to go to Stanford.
And I would just say, look out the window.
Yeah, well, there's that. But they do come here. It's not just because they want to go skiing, although that's an awesome reason to come. But it's because they really understand that Boulder and the Leeds School has a long history of working in particularly in the organic and naturals industry, but also in renewable energy and the other specific industries that, as well as tech, all sorts of tech startups happening here in Boulder.
Yep.
But that's a more recent thing, I mean, organics really kind of got started here to a large extent with the founding of Celestial Seasonings back in the 70s. And, here we see it today with Asher Brewing, where we're saying today.
So when you think of organic, does it actually parallel sustainability in your mind?
Parallel?
I mean,
sure. I mean, aligned with, related to, clearly one of the better mechanisms we know of reducing the environmental impact of agriculture. Absolutely. Where it gets a little trickier is when you start talking about the health benefits.
That's right.
And the peer-reviewed research is not conclusive about whether there is actually any health benefit to eating organic. Now, personally, I'll just talk for myself. I try not to take a lot of medications and over-the-counter drugs. Like, if I've got a cold, I'm like, I think I'll tough it out. I mean, you see things like now it's just finding out that Zantac causes cancer, for example. And I'm not trying to go out on a limb and say non-organic food causes cancer or anything like that.
That's right.
But I mean, this is something that people have to make their own decisions about. Now, clearly, the actual footprint as far as pesticide usage and runoff and water contamination, things like that, is better for organic. But there's a really interesting paper, I believe it was in Nature Climate Change just last month, if I'm not mistaken, that showed if the UK, particularly actually if England and Wales converted to organic, the carbon footprint would be at best neutral and probably actually negative. And what I mean by that is there would actually be more carbon emissions than there would be otherwise, because the production that would have to have happened in the UK would be pushed to other land masses where they'd be developed, and you would actually have more carbon emissions due to agriculture.
Sure.
So the yield of organic is something folks struggle with. But I think it's actually gone beyond that now. People are now talking more about regenerative agriculture. And that's the idea of how do you do agriculture in a way where you're actually sequestering carbon.
Interesting.
And that's actually sort of the cutting edge of what we talk about in our classes here, and what the organics and naturals industry is really moving towards. But, are we at a place where that is actually a large-scale adoption? No, not necessarily. But neither was organic.
That's right.
Even 10 years ago, but certainly 20 years ago.
Well, we start with small steps.
Yeah, I mean,
and entrepreneurs though are focused on this issue, and doing a little bit of background research for today's discussion, looking into organics because of the barriers to entry. It is more expensive to get going. That corporate farming is a big player in the organic industry, and that environmental footprint is pretty much the same as if they weren't going for organic.
Yeah, I mean, that's arguable. I mean, there's research on both sides. Let's talk about how they got there, though.
I'd love to.
And that's kind of what this paper's about.
Great.
In a way. The first paper we're going to do, Entrepreneurship for Sustainable Development, a Review and Multilevel Causal Mechanism Framework. Now, what does that title do for you, Brad? Does that just draw you right in?
Right into another beer.
Well, so here we go with the distillation aspect, since we're not a distillery. We're at a brewery. I guess this would be the fermentation aspect. We'll do that later, though. So this paper is by Matthew P. Johnson and Stefan Schaltegger. Stefan is actually a faculty member at the Center for Sustainability Management at Leuphana University in Nuremberg, Germany, which I highly recommend visiting. I went and visited him there once. It's a beautiful place, just a lovely town. And Matthew was his doctoral student, and he graduated, I think, about 2 years ago, maybe just a year ago. And he's on the Faculty of Business, Economics, and Social Science at the University of Hamburg, Germany.
Okay.
So Stefan is really one of the leading thinkers and one of the founders of even talking about environmental sustainability and entrepreneurship. He's been doing this for longer than just about anyone, and is a really brilliant guy. And Matthew, or I guess I should say Matt, that's what he goes by, is also a really bright young talent in the field. So I was very excited to see this paper come out. And I was excited about that because there's a growing literature on this idea, academic literature, on this idea of sustainability, particularly environmental sustainability and entrepreneurship. And the basic idea is, hey, maybe entrepreneurs can create things like the organic farming practice that eventually gets adopted at a large scale, like you were just talking about, Brad. And maybe we need that, it's kind of building from Joseph Schumpeter's classic ideas, where we take the title of this podcast, of creative destruction. We need the entrepreneurs to go out and create these new industries, go out and do these things, and when they do so, they will supplant the less socially and economically efficient companies, and we'll have a wave of new companies, and we see that happen all the time. This is how industries emerge. Here's the problem, though. So these guys did a review of 161 papers. They broke that down from, I think, literally thousands of articles, and just went down and had some criteria to get more. Imagine that. Imagine like reading 161 of these things, much less now 4,269. I think I started.
There's a reason these guys are based in Germany, because the brewing there is also very, very good. And to go through 4,000 of these, I'm telling you, I don't know if there's enough beer in Germany.
I bet there is, actually.
Yeah.
But in any event, so they went through all that, and they went through it with a very specific goal. And they talk about in an academic way. They talk about, and they say, here's what they call the research question of this project.
Okay.
Which causal mechanisms are articulated in the entrepreneurship for sustainable development literature that link macro, meso, and micro level processes pertaining to entrepreneurship for sustainable development? Now, that's the way we have to frame the question.
Okay, what the hell did you just say?
I think what you could reframe that is, how do we help individuals, entrepreneurs that want to, as we've talked about, many of our students, want to make a difference and address the massive environmental and social issues we face as a global society? How do we help them make a difference?
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
How do we understand the relationship between an individual spotting an opportunity to say, I'm going to create an organic brewery, then to move that up to the meso or the organizational or community level,
yes,
create an organization, be part of a community, push others towards more responsible practices, and then how do we get that to the macro level, which generally means nations, societies, institutions. Right. So they're saying, what is the causal chain that links from that individual saying, I'm going to do this thing, all the way up to actually seeing real change and the improvement of sustainability goals.
So that totally makes sense to me. What I'm hoping is that wasn't the last sentence of the paper.
I mean, that's the first sentence of the.
Good.
Well, not the first. It's the. I couldn't count this many sentences, but it's the. Generally, the research question in any academic paper is going to come right around the top of the third paragraph and the second paragraph.
Okay, thanks. And what we're looking for, though, at least in my angle, is. Are there suggestions in these academic papers that we can actually translate and say this would be actually of practical use to someone that wants to make a difference?
Yeah, and the thing is, they would have a hard time drawing that out of this paper because they get to that research question. And this is no slam on Matt and Stefan.
No.
This is the way we write. And they're not writing for that audience necessarily, although I know they both care deeply about this issue and do a lot of wonderful teaching and working with people that are doing things. It's just, how do you take that? And that's sort of the point of what we're doing here, like trying to take these things and distill them down. And I like this paper a lot. I like it because it's a very careful review of this literature. And the problem with this literature, it tends to be about how do these things emerge? How did we come to have organic breweries? Okay. How did we come to have renewable energy? That's interesting, but it's not really useful if you're a student or an entrepreneur sitting in the classroom. It's like, okay, that's how this came to. It's like a history lesson.
If I'm studying the history of sustainability, I care. If I'm actually trying to make a difference in the world and start my business and make a difference, are there 3 takeaways that you could come up with in this paper?
There's 2.
Okay, 2 is good. So I'm really anxious.
1
to see.
is good, right?
Well, 1 is amazing.
Yeah. Well, they're actually interrelated. So it is technically 1. And I'll just say, I've been teaching sustainable venturing, a class about environmental entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship for 10 years. And we need more work like this. I do a lot of this. I think at the end of the day that what's needed, and we've talked about this before, is for somebody to write the green startup. If you're out there, don't steal my idea. Well, actually, you can steal my idea. If you execute on it, great, good for you. I don't think it's a particularly original idea, but we need a version of the lean startup for environmental and social entrepreneurs. Here's how to do this, right? Here's some frameworks. Here's some easy ways. We don't have that, and that's why Matt and Stefan are really doing us a service by this paper. So,
we could write a book together too, and we could do it ourselves.
We could do that, yes. So if you're a book publisher out there and you're just looking to pick up some wonderfully insightful creative distillation, the book. That's right. Anyway, back to the paper. So insights. So here's the deal. There's 2 interrelated insights, and I think they're really powerful because they come from these guys going through all these papers and then creating a framework about these multiple levels and then how action works. The first one is, if you're going to move from the individual level, I'm going to do my startup, right? And I'm going to do everything in a really responsible manner, and I'm going to try to create an environmentally beneficial product. That's a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you can find a market and get that going and economically sustain yourself, I think that's great. Now, we see a lot of things like that in our classes. But the question is, most of the people that do that want to move beyond, right?
That's right, 100%.
Their goal is not just to create their own little startup and do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not their goal. They want to have a bigger impact. And what Matt and Stefan highlight is, okay, if you're going to move from that, what they call the micro level, to the community, industry, organizational, meso level, you're going to have to engage in some kind of collective action. A way to get from we're doing this thing to this thing is right and lots of us are doing it and we're going to make that just the way business is done.
But isn't that actually what entrepreneurs do? Forget about sustainability for 1 second. But in some of your earlier research about effectuation, about how entrepreneurs look to, in a sense, gain partners and establish partnerships as they move forward and grow.
Right.
Is there a difference between those 2 thoughts?
Yeah. So effectuation is very much a micro individual. So when we say micro, we're talking about the individual or the team theory. It's about how does an individual entrepreneur think and what are the things they do to succeed.
That's right.
And so when they talk about stakeholders and self-selected stakeholders, the effectual model is all about what I'm doing at the venture level. What Matt and Stefan are alluding to here is moving beyond that towards, say, the trade association level. And some examples in this particular realm would be things like the B Corp certification or the U.S. Green Building Council that certifies green buildings and then allow for the propagation. But if you think about it for a second, the U.S. Green Building Council can't do anything if there's not entrepreneurs creating the products 100%. And services that allow you to engage in meeting their certification. Also, a little more creatively, partnering, and this is the second part of this, the second insight. So first one is you got to move into some kind of collective action at the industry level. So you're not going to be able to really make an impact by just doing your individual business. You might on a very localized level, that might be a very nice thing. But if you want to actually have impacts at that micro sort of broader environmental aspect, you're going to have to engage in some kind of collective
And before you
action.
move on from that point, I do think that actually scares many entrepreneurs.
Oh, of
that
course.
Once you start going into this broader level and you're looking for whether it's governmental support, trade association support,
that's right.
It's a dangerous part of your life of your life cycle for your company. Is there a best practices approach to doing this where you don't put yourself in the position that all of a sudden this trade organization doesn't agree with you and you're shut down?
Yeah, can we table that for just a minute?
Sure.
Because I think the second paper we're going to look at actually dives into this.
Great.
Through a historic case study. So they don't in this paper make prescriptions of like how you should do that necessarily, because again they're doing a literature review and trying to in a sense doing their own distilling of saying here's the things that we found across 161 papers that we can say, hey, you don't have to read 161 papers. You can just say, if I want to make an impact beyond just my own venture, I'm going to have to engage in that. And interrelated to that, and their second point is you have to broaden your stakeholder engagement. And this is related to the effectual model. And what they mean by that is you got to start thinking about stakeholders beyond certainly your investors.
Oh,
and well beyond just being a good employer and taking care of your suppliers, and start to think, well, who are potential stakeholders beyond that. We just had a dog walk in here, so we're like looking over him. It's awesome. I love living in Boulder.
Me too.
I love that we're in a brewery and a dog just came in. That's great. I almost brought my dog. And when you do that, and the effectual model, and this is why I do teach this to students, like, don't think about who should be my stakeholder. Like, how can I get a meeting with Elon Musk? Like, well, you're not going to.
That's right.
So don't worry about Elon Musk. Worry about the person who will meet with you and who's willing to give you advice and put skin in the game. And what they're saying is if you want to make a broader sustainable development impact, you need to think about a broader stakeholder engagement, and particularly think about engaging with NGOs and activist organizations in ways that align your interest. And when you do that, you might actually create opportunity for yourself to do something more.
On this point, we both agree heartily.
Cool.
And I think that beyond what this paper is and its sustainability, I just think it's best practices
in
businesses.
Sure. It's just but I think I always talk about sustainable entrepreneurship as being like entrepreneurship on steroids a little bit, because you got to do everything regular entrepreneurs have to do.
You do.
Like, it's not like, oh, I'm doing this sustainable thing. I'm making recycled wool shirts. Therefore, nobody has to like them, and I don't have to have a good supply chain, and I don't have to make a decent margin, and I don't have to manage well. Like, no.
And then next week you're going to be working at the brewery down the street.
Yeah, exactly, right. But I think Patagonia is a great example of that. It's like they don't just do environmentally progressive practices. They make fantastic products, and they market them exceptionally well.
That's right.
I think Yvonne Chenard is an amazing entrepreneur.
And I agree with that. So, but I do think it can be a challenge, actually, for entrepreneurs, and certainly entrepreneurs starting, to actually identify who these stakeholders are. Right?
Yes.
And
so what do you tell people to do in your class?
It's in my life and starting businesses, it's all about meeting as many people as you can meet.
Cast the net wide. Don't worry about the people that don't like you or don't listen. Take what you can from it and move on.
That's right.
And so taking that individual insight that we have as teachers and saying, okay, let's see, the nice thing about a paper like this is because, you and I can say that, and our students will probably believe us because,
because where we stand.
We can be persuasive.
Yep.
But to me, it's like when you look at the academic research, it's more like, hey, next time you tell someone that, you can say, hey, these guys, in 2020 reviewed 4,000 papers and found across those 4,000 studies, and that's just a quick summarization. I'm not doing justice to their paper, but hey, if you want to be successful in making an impact, you're going to have to think more broadly than your individual venture. You're going to have to think about how do we create a broader industry-wide impact, and I'm going to need to think more broadly about who my stakeholders are than the way normal, quote-unquote, normal companies think.
Yep.
And I think that's awesome.
I think you're preaching to the choir here. I think that this is best practices for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And if this paper points it out and gets us talking about it, and people actually hearing this message, I think we just did a real service to our listeners.
Well, I hope so.
In bringing this up. So I think that's
here's
fabulous.
What's cool though, and I won't go into it, but they actually break down at each of these 3 levels what are the specific actions you can do based on the situation, based on taking action, and then based on transforming institutions towards greater sustainability. Now, I'm trying to be better at distilling, so I'm not going to go into that, but you could, and I guess I probably will, create a whole session of a class or a lecture about, okay, so let's look at the phase of your company and what you're trying to do. Here are some specific actions you can take, and then how do those link to the next level?
Right.
And so I think it's a really nice paper. People that are interested in trying to do that, academics, it is a literature review. It is dense reading for a non-academic. It's going to have a bunch of language in it that is maybe not the most interesting. But the cool thing about Matt and Stefan's paper is there's all these tables. So you don't have to read the paper. If you're not an academic and you don't want to read the paper, that's fine.
A hell of a plug for your friends. You don't have to read.
Awesome.
You don't have to read the paper. Just look at the pictures.
Now, if you're an academic, you should read the paper because it's great and it's going to be very well cited. But page 12 and 13, it'll be different page numbers when it's published by Impress, and then page 21. There's nice little tables. So, if you're teaching a class on sustainable entrepreneurship and you're listening to this and you have no idea what you want to do, you could do worse than to start here.
Yeah,
it's a really nice
and the bottom line is broaden your stakeholders, actually cast a wide net. I think that was a really great way to frame this.
Absolutely.
And then you'll find people that actually share your vision and can actually help you. And I think that this collaboration that can come out of this can also be a really beneficial outcome for entrepreneurs as well.
I agree. And I want to very quickly talk about one more paper, because at the end of this paper, what Matt and Stefan talk about is the need, by involving stakeholders, environmental associations, or social networks into venture development, entrepreneurs can create business opportunities on the micro level through stakeholder support at the meso level. So what they're saying is when we reach out to these stakeholders at a broader level, we can perhaps create opportunity for themselves. What they don't talk about is what our next paper talks about. And we've been talking a lot about organic because this paper, this paper's a little older, but I thought it really nicely dovetailed with the other one. This paper is in Organization Science. It was published in 2017. And it is by Brandon Lee, Sean Hyatt, and Mike Lonsbury. And these guys, Brandon and Sean, both are graduates from Cornell's Business School, PhDs there. And Mike is, again, one of the leading voices in more broadly corporate sustainability. He's been doing this for a while, similar to Stefan, really a leader in this, and back doing it before it became more popular. And their paper is really interesting. And the title is Market Mediators and the Trade-Offs of Legitimacy-Seeking Behaviors in a Nascent Category. Now, if our last title turned you off a little, Brad, I bet that one really...
I still have a little beer left, so I'm
okay. Yeah, I have a little left too.
Okay, good.
Man, that oatmeal stout's good. So, what's interesting about this is a deep dive into what we were just talking about how it happened. And I love this paper. I saw this paper presented for years, and like many creative papers, it took a while to find traction, find a home, because Brandon did this, if I'm not mistaken, as part of his dissertation, where he spent a lot of time looking through historic documents and interviewing people to do qualitative research. Okay. There's no statistical analysis. There's just a great story and really interesting insights derived from it. So here's the thing. Here, the problem they're looking at with this paper is, I think if we think about sustainability, clearly we need new market categories to emerge. We need things like organic beer. We need things like renewable energy. We need these categories that are not clear to most people what they are when they first come out.
Right, but I would say, and I don't mean to use this as a pun, but those categories should actually percolate organically.
Yeah.
Right? Founded by entrepreneurs, micro level, gains traction, and then you go.
And then they do, and that's sort of the story. That's sort of what it's the how. How do you gain the traction? Like, how do you get there? How do I be recognizable enough that people can get what my product is about, but be different enough where I'm valued differentially? And this is really a problem with an emerging category. So the question here is, how do founders balance this double-edged sword of trying to be distinctive enough, at the same time try to gain traction for something, their broader industry? And so what they do is they study the California, oh gosh, I knew I was going to mess up. It's the CCOF, which they say about 1,000 times, California Certified Organic Farmers Association.
Right.
And how that turns from a period going from 1993 to 2006 from a collective of individuals who cared about this into a broad certification that, of course, eventually gets sort of subsumed by the larger federal organic certification. And it's interesting. I remember when you looked at this, Brad, you had a specific thought, like, what happens when the government gets involved?
That's right. And when the government gets involved, to me, it's always terrifying, right? That's the end of everything good that's happened. And I actually think that the government is trying to do good things, but for me, a general cookie cutter approach that works in one place normally doesn't work in another place, right?
Yeah, sure. And so that's actually one of the kind of lessons of this paper. And so I wanted to lay out the insight here, and I can't distill this into like a one takeaway though.
Okay.
But I do think they lay out a really nice a process model of how do you manage that optimal distinctiveness. We're a bunch of guys and gals, and we've started up our organic farms in California, and we want more people to do organic farming, and we want to succeed.
Well, first of all, our interests even aligned, right? Because success means different things to different people. So this is, even though it sounds like, wow, everybody, this makes sense, we should all go and do this, it's not that simple. No, it never is. And in this paper, what they show is a process emerges. Now, with qualitative research, you're not trying to say, this is the way it will always be done, and this is generalizable to everyone in every place. But you're trying to say, here's a story, here's some insights that emerge from it, very careful analysis. It's not journalism either, because they're going through like every word of every record, analyzing it, pulling out themes. It's not just saying, here's what happened. It's saying, here's what that means. And so first step in this, you've got to set and verify a standard if you want this to take off. Yes.
The reason you have to do that is because that defines what the category actually is and makes it where people can understand and trust in what it's doing. Second step, you've got to grow membership. And as soon as you start to grow membership, you face the double-edged sword of, are we diluting what we were doing? To your point, do we even align on that anymore?
Or does the membership get to a point where they rewrite the definition?
Yes. So what do? This is why I love this paper. Every time, I'm going to just say these steps. I'm going to just let you say what's wrong with that. Because I'm going to show this.
I'm not a hater, Jeff. I'm just trying to find these tools.
No. Right? I just mean because you haven't read the paper.
Right, I have not.
And I want you to bring, like, this is what I would think about, right?
Yep.
As an entrepreneur. Okay, so yeah, exactly. So how do you do that? What you have to do to avoid that is you have to professionalize. In other words, you have to have standards of what it means to be a member, and you have to frame what it means to be a member consistently. So you have to have written documents, clear charters, statements that you
have to create an infrastructure.
Exactly. Almost a psychological infrastructure of this is what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we were doing earlier tonight. We were trying to frame the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And we were like, well, what's the sentence going to be, right? Okay. Second thing, you have to engage downstream in the supply chain. In other words, you've got to get the people who are going to buy your products and market them to the general public to actually work with you. You've got to engage those folks.
And that can be dangerous early on because you may be dealing with single source suppliers as you early on gain traction. And once you start to scale, that's dangerous. So in a sense, you need to resonate your message actually downstream as well.
I'm just laughing. I'm hearing this dog barking in the bar.
Oh,
he's worried about this.
He's agreeing.
He's agreeing with you, Brad. He's worried. He's like, be careful. And so what they say you have to do to manage that is you've got to strengthen your verification processes. Because if you're engaging with these downstream suppliers, their goal is going to be to push you to make your product cheaper, faster, better, all those things that they do. And so you've got to make sure you're keeping those verification standards, you're ratcheting them upwards even.
So making them tougher. You need intellectual buy-in from your downstream suppliers. So,
which again goes back to the broader stakeholder
That's
set,
right. And it is expanding your stakeholders 100%. But that's actually much more difficult, especially on a small scale.
Yep.
It's very, very difficult.
And that's why sustainable entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship on steroids.
Yeah.
It's like trying to run a race by putting on some shoes with lead weights in them.
That's right.
I mean, I think it's great, and I'm obviously a supporter of it. But I always like to make my students understand, look, this is going to be hard.
So, but I do think that just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a couple techniques that may be effective in doing this.
Sure.
In a sense, alliances with your suppliers.
Yes.
Right? So
absolutely.
If you can create this alliance and show how your business can actually help grow theirs.
Absolutely.
In a do no harm.
And they might even be initial investors.
That's right.
Do that.
That's right.
Yep,
that's
absolutely.
Right.
Okay. Third thing that you're going to be most scared of.
I know where this is going.
Get authority from the state.
Right, that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. So what do you think you can do? I mean, like they are saying, it should scare the crap out of you because as soon as the government has control of something and you've vested the authority of what used to be your own private certification into the state, you often will lose control. And you're going to lose the ability to be very innovative because now you're beholden to all sorts of governmental regulation and things like that.
And tribalism is resonating so deeply in this country about what politics are and what's right. So that to me is such a dangerous.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, just as a brief segue. Okay, I'm gonna stay on topic here.
No. I'd actually like to hear your thoughts because we can edit this out.
Well, no, I think that's why entrepreneurship is such not just an important thing for people and for companies and for the economy. I think entrepreneurship, based on my own research, gives us a way to get past that divisiveness in our country. I think it's very hard to find people on the left or the right in any prominence who are opposed to people building new business, products, and services that are economically prosperous and have a positive environmental or social impact.
Right.
It inherently hybridizes the arguments where it's hard for people to argue against it.
So
that's why I put my hope there.
I would love to do that, and I don't want to be a cynic, but I'd also like to tell you that last night before I went to bed, I saw the tooth fairy running out of my room.
Yeah, but this happens, man.
I hope so.
But it's happening. I mean, it's not that it's happening in such a way that we don't all have to worry.
But we talk about scalability, though, so it may happen on a very localized level.
Yeah, but
right. So
everything happens
it makes me
on a
nervous.
localized level.
It just makes me nervous.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think you'd be foolish to not be nervous. But I mean, I don't know what else is going to happen. Do you think that corporations are all of a sudden going to toe the line? And
I totally agree with you. I mean, so the bottom line is we have to operate in the world that's in this reality.
Okay. So how do you manage that? They got a really simple and pragmatic suggestion. You control the boards. So when they partnered with the state, they made sure that 6 of the 13 board members on this certification organization were members of the CCOF.
Right.
Now, 6 of 13 is not a controlling share, but considering the other board members were from a wide variety of organizations, it's not bad. If you're doing a startup and you're able to do that.
So that's been the strategy with the big boys forever.
Yeah.
Right. So in a sense, the smaller players are thinking like this. I agree, but I do think that it's a challenge that when you're talking about taking on the big boys and they control the boards, it's tough. And I'm not. Yeah. And once again,
so that's you got to maintain you got to maintain your small, centralized identity of the organization. If you're gonna maintain that distinctiveness, right?
That's right.
But you got to have these steps because otherwise you just remain small. You'll never get beyond.
I agree.
You'll never get to the master level, right?
So I think, in a sense, if you can build this team of stakeholders
right.
before you tackle these problems, and you come in with a crowd versus an individual,
and there's alliances.
Yeah, and the alliances that actually gives you some power to actually take on these larger players.
So if I had to distill all that down, overall, the message of this paper is: if you want to actually create a new market category with some of these social good spillovers, like the organic industry, overall, you've got to reduce the differences between what you're doing and what already exists. You've got to make it as small of a difference as you can, because otherwise people will not adopt.
That's right.
But you also have to maintain specific clarity on what empirically is differentiable about your product, differentiatable.
And I would say that might be the toughest challenge for an entrepreneur, because all of a sudden you start to grow and you see another shiny ball bounce across your vision, and you can lose focus.
Yeah. Well, that's the micro literature. That's not
right. But I'm talking about. But all these things are real traits of human beings, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right,
sure.
And I'm just trying to.
And actually, that's a great segue into the but.
Right.
I would say that's the big lesson of the paper. But know that when you do that, the identity of the thing you loved that you and your friends all created together is going to become, almost by definition, less special. It's going to inherently not be as much of the true believer kind of thing you had going. I mean, it's going to get diluted.
Yes,
it's like saying
I would
distilled
say,
on
though,
this podcast.
that change, though, is still better than living a week ago.
Yeah, and that's actually some things I'm working on now. Like I've got a paper called Green to Gone, where it's showing a lot of these entrepreneurs in the green space fail.
That's right.
But we're better off for it.
Right. If you want to turn an aircraft carrier, it takes a little bit of time, and it's a couple degrees
and
at
a lot
time.
of cannon fodder, unfortunately. Which is why I'm an academic and not an entrepreneur. So that's it. That's what we got for you this week.
I love it.
That's so again, check out these papers: Organization Science, Market Mediators, and the Trade-Offs of Legitimacy. First author is Brandon Lee, also with Sean Hyatt and Mike Lonsbury. Wonderful paper, just fun to read, actually. And I think this is one that anybody could pick up and read and actually enjoy, because it's telling a story. And then Matt Johnson and Stefan Schaltegger, Entrepreneurship for Sustainable Development. That one's forthcoming in Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice.
And that's the one that comes with a case of German beer.
Yeah. Well, I think if you tell you what, I'm hoping they're going to provide us with some German beer for talking about. No, I would have talked about it anyway. I love these guys. I love their work, and they're wonderful scholars. So anything final thoughts on this topic, Brad?
No, I think that it was very insightful, and I do think that we picked up a couple pieces of valuable information.
I hope so.
That are actually practical.
Well, I know you've engaged in all sorts of startup activity that have more than an economic mission, and and that's one of the things I love about you, and I think this is something that when we can teach our students and when we can help other entrepreneurs who are trying to impact environmental and social issues, but also make a living for themselves, because it's really tough to do these things if you're not able to eat.
That's right, and change the world. I mean,
and change the world.
It's such a great
way
not
to be too cliche, but it's the only thing I have much. What somebody say? Somebody told me how grumpy I was the other day. I mean, I'm not grumpy about this. This is something I actually maintain hope in, and I think it's where the change is going to come. At least I hope so.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and I think that you selected two great papers today.
Well, that's very kind.
The other thing that I'd like to
these guys wrote them,
have our listeners understand is we're going to throw a slide up at the end of the podcast. If you'd like Jeff or I to address a topic, email us at the emails provided.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to talk about some of your issues and something that's pertinent. And if there's a way that we can distill something for you that would actually provide value in your venture, just let us know.
We'd really love if entrepreneurs wrote in and said, hey, I'm curious what the literature says about this. And,
for sure.
I'll do my best to go forward. And we're really excited. We have a couple of, I don't want to give away too much, but we have some really cool guests coming up. So it won't always just be Brad and I talking about this stuff. We're going to bring in guests. We're going to bring in guest entrepreneurs, guest academics. And, we're easy to find. Go to the Deming Center for Entrepreneurship at the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado Boulder, and let us know your suggestions and questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Awesome, Brad. Hey, let's go try that ginger beer.